Hello everyone. So in this video, I'm going to do an example of the memory model again. This time, applying the memory model to a more confusing example, or a harder example, more in-depth example, which is right over here. Um, if you haven't watched the first video, you might want to see that first. But if you're already comfortable with the blueprint of the memory model, then you can follow along with this video. But otherwise, check out the blueprint video so that you can actually figure out how to use the memory model. And here you're going to see an example where it's much more useful than that first example we had. It's much more useful for keeping track of the more complicated things that are going on, the stuff that's hard to remember all the time, so we write them down using the memory model technique to see everything at once. Okay, so here is this example. So this is some code that's purposely written for you to try to trace through. If you try to trace through this in your head, you'll somewhat get through it, but then you'll get really confused. So the idea is use the memory model. And as we know, as we're looking at this code, as we begin, we automatically skip all of this because these are just two lines of commenting. This is just a function definition, another function definition, and we just jump straight to the global code. So all the way over here. So over here. Okay. So all right. So we jump straight over here. And that's our first line. Line 19 is our first line for the memory model. So let's go and apply the memory model. So line 19 says my var is equal to d. Okay, so in my memory model, I'll just write my var is equal to. Now I need to make a string called d. So let's assign an ID 0, and then let's make ID. Let's make ID 0 d. Alright. Then we got print my var on that next line. So we're here now. Okay, so it says print my var. So what's my var? It's ID 0. What's ID 0 in memory space? It's just d. So alright, so when you're printing to the output, you just get this, because my var is d. My var is ID 0 and ID 0 is d rather. Okay, so on to the next line. It says my var is equal to func1 of my var. Okay, so in other words, we're going to change what my var is. Right now my var is ID 0. We're going to change it to something else. It could be ID 0 again, or it could be a different thing in memory. So we're going to change my var into whatever func1 of my var returns. So since I have a function call, I'm going to need this. I'm going to need this box that we need for our function scope. Here I'm going to put the function name, which is func1. The func1 of my var is going to have a return value, and this return value, if you actually see right here, my var is going to store the return value. So it's here. It's going to go, whatever the return value is going to go here. So I could put an arrow there. I'm just going to put my var. It's going to take that return value. It's the same my var that's going to return that. It's going to take that return value. Alright, so now we look at what func1 is taking in. And func1 is taking in my var, the global my var. So the global my var is ID 0. Okay. So since the global my var is ID 0, so now this function got called, and I jump all the way back here at func1. So I'm going to insert another arrow here to show you guys that we're here now temporarily. We're going to go through the function temporarily. And now here, func1 happens to also have a parameter named my var. So this is going to sound a bit confusing, but it's actually a simple idea. basically func1 is taking in my var, the global my var, which is id 0. Func1 is passing in id 0. Now here, in the definition of func1, its parameter name is my var. This my var is now storing whatever we passed in. We passed in id 0. So in memory, in the memory model, we're just going to have local my var, which is the parameter of func1. Since we passed in id 0, it's going to store id 0. Alright, so that was this line. Next, we'll go to this line, which does a print my var, and my var is, now we're here. Remember, we can't look here anymore. We're still in this box, and we can't leave it unless we see a return statement or the function ends. So it says print my var, which is id 0. id 0 is d. Okay, so d. Alright, and then we go to the next line. It says my var is equal to a. Alright. Now I'm still here, so now what I'm going to have to do is change this. So to show that I'm going to change it, I'm going to put an arrow across it. I'm going to put, or I'm going to put a line through it rather, and I'm just going to say that it's about to become a different ID. I'm going to say it's going to become ID 1. What's ID 1? It's A. Okay. Now my var, the local my var here, just became ID 1, which is A. Alright. So that's that line. Then we've got my var, then we got print my var. Alright. Let's print my var. Again, we're still here. So I look at my var, it's ID 1. Let's print ID 1, which is A. Alright. Then we go to the next line, which just says return my var. Okay. So my var here is ID 1. So I'm going to return this. I'm going to return ID 1. Okay. Then let's return ID 1 here. And if you remember, this my var is the same as this one, as we said a while back. So whatever this function returned from these set of things that just happened is going to be stored over here. So this is about to become ID 1. Alright, so now we're done with this function box. We finished. So we can simply just cross it out. And so that means we're now done this tracing as we trace through this. So we're done this blue line now, this blue arrow right here. Okay, and now we were at this line. So now we can move on to the next line. Okay, we're on line 22 now. So line 22 says print my var, which is ID 1. So it says print ID 1, which is A. Okay. Next, we're gonna have the next line of code, which says my var is equal to func2 of my var and my var. Okay, so now we have a function call, so we are going to have another box like this. Func2, and it's taking in my var and my var. Well, my var and my var are both ID1 and ID1. So once again, since I'm passing in ID1 and ID1 into here, I look back into func2, because now I'm going to jump over here, and since I'm passing in ID1, ID1, the local variables for this function, my var and my var2, are going to store ID1 and ID1 respectively. Okay,